for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so happy to have you here, and we're so excited about this program. I don't know about you, but I've been looking forward to this for the last 2 weeks. We'd like you to do first is just check the three little dots on the top right corner in case your name on your slide isn't who you are. We want to know your name. And then in the chat, if you could introduce yourself in the chat by putting your name and your location, your pronouns, and your favorite summer activity. On behalf of the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, New York League of Conservation Voters of PA, and the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, I want to welcome you here tonight with us. My partner, Kai Mateo, and I are going to be co-hosting this with you. So let's get started. My name is Patty Kronheim, and I'm the campaigns director here at New Jersey LCV. My pronouns are she, her. My hometown is Hopewell, New Jersey, but I am transitioning to the shore and beautiful Allenhurst, New Jersey, right by Asbury Park. And my favorite summer activity is surfing.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. As Patty said, my name is Kai Mateo. I'm the federal campaign manager with the Maryland LCV, New Jersey LCV, New York, and Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. I use he, him pronouns. I'm from Oceanside, California originally, but I now live in Philadelphia. And one of the many things I have in common with Patty is that my favorite summer activity is also surfing. Back to you, Patty.
Great. We have with us here tonight Maggie Burns, who is the Director of Cultural Strategies at National LCV. Maggie, you want to shout out your favorite, all your data? We have Maggie off mute.
Sorry, Patty. Yeah, it cut out for me, but you said shout out.
Shout out your name, your pronouns.
Gotcha. I'm sorry about
your
that.
favorite summer activity.
Hello, everyone. I am Maggie Bruns, Director of Cultural Strategies. I use she, her pronouns. I come from Champaign, Illinois, but have been in DC for the last 15 years. And this summer will not be the same as other summers. My whole summer will be about art activation. So I'll leave it there and kick it to someone else here.
Great. Well, I just want to give a shout out to the people who are helping us on this call, Molly Riley and Joe Hendershot and Halima Twam of NJLCB staff. They're doing the back support, so big thanks to them. So to dive right into this, we want to just let you know what the goals are of this training. And really, this training is all about art and about how it makes a difference, because art is the language of the heart. We really want to be able to share with you what it is and why it matters. And we're going to help teach you a little bit about the Build Back Better agenda, if you don't know about it, and the big, bold steps that Congress must take on climate. And we're also going to help you plan how you can participate in an art action over the August congressional recess. So let's do an agenda review. First thing we're going to do is intro and ground rules. We're going to talk about art activism and why it doesn't matter. We'll have a question and answer period. We're going to have the Build Back Better session. We're going to do a little breakout room brainstorming talking about art, which should be a lot of fun. You're going to get a chance to share your ideas with the larger group if you're so inclined. And we're going to talk about art in the federal climate campaign. And then we're going to talk about next steps. And then hopefully at the end, you'll stick around and you'll be able to tell us how we did, because that always matters to us. So ground rules. Make space, take space. If you're someone who talks a lot, maybe practice your active listening. If you're somebody who tends to be very quiet and shy, maybe step up and write something in the chat or volunteer to say something. Get on the bike. You don't read a book about how to ride a bike. You just get on the bike and do it, and eventually you get it. And if you fall, it's okay, because we're all here to pick you up, so that works just fine. Assume the best intentions. We're all on the same team here, and we're all here to support each other. And then the basic Zoom norms. Be ready to share with a partner if you're in a breakout room. Turn your video on, because we love to see your face, and mute your mic so we don't have to hear background noise. And use the chat feature to ask questions and get tech support. Molly will be manning the chat and able to help you with any questions you may have. So Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first guest presenter. There we go. Our first guest presenter is Kim Frazek. I am so excited to have Kim here. I've known her for years and I consider her a dear friend. Kim is the director of the Sane Energy Project. She is a fierce fossil fuel fighter, and she works towards community-owned renewables, and she has used art a lot of times for action. So we are super excited to have her here today. I think she's going to have a perspective that is just unique and singularly wonderful. So I hope you all get as much out of it as I know I'm going to, and we're all going to. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kim, and Kim, take it away.
Thanks so much, Patty. And it's so great to be here with everybody. And I can't wait to hear about the ideas that you come up with and how you're going to sculpt the Build Back Better campaign. I'm going to share with you some things that we have done. And I hope that it can inspire you and explain why art is used in strategy. Art is strategic, art is community building, and art really helps us get our message out there and communicate why we're doing what we're doing. And it's, so we could just go to the next slide. I guess we'll just pitch in. So I really believe, and I've seen, art really does change the way that we communicate with people around us. And that creates a conversation. And that shifts the narrative of our societal value system and our world views. And this is what actually helps to shift policy, is when people have that sort of commonality. And so art is a tactic in our toolbox that we use to help do outreach and a whole bunch of other things. I apologize for that really quick. Okay, so go to the next slide. I'm going to run through a lot of slides, and I may run through them quickly, and you can have access to this slideshow anytime you want. And also I'll be giving you my phone number. You can text or signal me anytime you want if you need help with something or you have questions. So I just hope that a lot of this inspires you, because then you're going to start talking about your campaign and building strategy and art around that. So so art does change the communication. So we were at, this is a big mural of two families that were living near fossil fuel infrastructure, one at the Cove Point LNG facility and one at the mini sink compressor station in Orange County, New York. And FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, was the decision maker on a lot of the fossil fuel infrastructure that people were coming together to fight. So what we did is we realized FERC is this opaque agency that nobody knows anything about. And we, they do now because of our activism over the last decade, making them, known to people. But what we did is we made giant 8-foot tall photographs of two families that were injured by the decisions that were made inside this building in Washington, D.C. And we realized people can make the decision because they're not connected to the people on the ground on like whose lives they're affecting. So what we did is we made a blockade. So we made sure that the people that were walking into the building had to break the families apart in order to go to work and do their job. And we also wanted them to see who it was that their decisions were affecting at their job that day. If you go to the next slide, this is just a close-up of a few of the kids that I've worked with and I love very dearly. That just a close-up. So go to the next slide. We worked with a lot of farmers in the fight against fracking, right? And so as we know, our work isn't just about stopping fossil fuels. It is intersectional with the fight against racism, the fight against economic injustice, the fight against indigenous land rights, the fight for our food and water, and that is all economic too. So we work together with lots of different organizations in our fight working with farmers. We started fighting Monsanto too, because that is a big part of the fight against extraction, and fracking is just one of the faces of extraction. So we made these big banners made with the seeds and beans of some of the farmers that we were working with. And we also brought large butterflies to show, the importance of, pollination and making sure that the land and the soil are healthy. Next slide. This was little mini puppets that we made. They were, I don't know, yay big, 3 inches or 4 inches tall. And we made them during when Black Lives Matter was becoming a really big movement. So we made a whole bunch of these, and we just thought like this was such an epic like visual of what was going on. It was, it was like, don't shoot, which was the demand, and what's at stake. And what's at stake is our freedom and our liberty. And Lady Liberty is such an epic, logo of so much of like what we love and what we stand for, and welcoming in people. Okay, next slide. This was something that we made for the Black Lives Matter movement. And we realized we didn't want to make like large banners because the movement was about the people in the street and the numbers that were showing up. So we thought, how do we make banners that convey the message that our allies had come to us and asked us to make artwork for their march? How do we use that so we're also allowing the important part of the march to shine, which is the amount of people that were in the streets? So we decided to make see-through banners, and so people could, you could still see the the messages and the demands, but it was not about that. That was a secondary. The main character was the march. Next slide. So I just wanted to show, this was a picture of Zuccotti Park. And if you go to the next slide, it just shows how art can change what a crowd looks like that could have just been any old person in the public, any old group of people in the public square, but now throw a Statue of Liberty puppet in there. And this actually changes what that crowd is actually doing there. Next slide. And this is a Mayday poll we made in Union Square during Occupy Wall Street. And so all the demands of the entire Occupy movement were on each of the threads. And then we would dance together in a May poll on May Day. And go to the next slide. But say if that wasn't there, there would just be a crowd in Union Square hanging out, which we all love crowds. Marches and big crowds are important, but having art at the center of that changes how people react with each other and how we are communicating with why we are there to any passerby or anybody that would be taking pictures. Next slide. And we also had a big action on student debt, on debt relief. And if you go to the next slide, if that wasn't there, it would just, that game wouldn't have been played. And if you go to the next slide, the fact that we had that puppet with us, the newswoman came over and talked to us saying like, what are you doing? Because it was like something that she could connect to and say, oh, this is an interesting thing, rather than just going up to some rando in the park and just being like, what are you doing here? But knowing that somebody is going to be bringing art that sort of displays what that protest was about really helped her to be like, that person must have talking points or know what to say. Next slide. So we're able to start this conversation. These are just a couple of images also of how we've changed the public square to build conversation. So on the right is my friend Claire and her lawyer, Paul Mills. Claire was arrested during Occupy, and they were illegally scanning all of our eyes, anybody that got arrested. And so Claire took that to court. And the fact that she had this big eyeball outside the court, lots of media came over and said, hey, what's going on? And she was able to tell her story. Same here with my friend Eric. He was able to get the attention of media coming to him. And also what was really great about this moment is families that were, tourists in New York City passed by Occupy Wall Street and were like, oh my God, that's really scary. But then they saw the puppet and, oh, can my kids take a picture with you? This is really cool. Who are you? What are you here with? Oh, we're here with Occupy Wall Street. And we were able to change the narrative that we weren't just, dirty, lazy hippies looking for a free handout. Okay, next slide. These were a group of kids that we worked with in Newark that were targeting Governor Christie at the time and Cammie Anderson, who was like the superintendent of the school district there that was treating them very unjustly. And so they did a huge action there. We helped them build art to help them message what their demand was. And they wanted the superintendent to be fired and let go from her job. If you go to the next slide, because of that action, they were able to get an article in Rolling Stone magazine. And it was great because Rolling Stone was able to use that art and take photographs and show the entire nation and the entire world what exactly these students, these beautiful, amazing, like young 15-year-old students were doing in Newark, New Jersey for justice. Next slide. We also use cantastoria, which means sung story in Italian. Cantastorias date back to, like 400 BC. They actually originated in India. And this is where you have a large tapestry or a storybook, and you write a poem or a song to go with your images. So we've used that to talk about LNG when we were fighting a massive LNG port off the coast of New Jersey and New York. We had banded together for that and won, woohoo. And, this was just a way of like teaching people in a broken down sense, like complicated stories, right? LNG, what the heck is LNG? Well, we were able to like tell that story through a song and a poem. Kids like it, adults like it, and it just was such a winner. And we were able to get them to sign petitions, take action, tell their neighbors. Next slide. This is another image of Cantastoria. So these folks that we worked with, they were, their parents were allowed to come here as teachers and bring their families over. And they were from the West Indies nations, and then also from like England and Austria. And of course, all of the folks from, because we live in a white supremacist nation, all of the students, all the kids of these teachers who were Black or brown were told, okay, you're 21, you're aged out, you have to leave. But the students that were from the Northern European white nations had no problems whatsoever with their visas or staying and getting jobs here and living their lives. So we took this to Bryant Park in Midtown Manhattan. We helped them develop a cantastoria to tell their story, talking about what aging out meant. And we got tons of petition signatures. People stopped on their lunch hour and they were like, this is terrible. I had no idea this was going on. And if you go to the next slide, we got a story in the New York Times. We got a story on NPR. The two men featured in this are now here still thriving and growing. And one of them is starting a family. So this is really wonderful news. And I'm not saying it's all because of the art, but that was a really big part of helping to shape how many people were against it and get new people involved in their struggle. Next slide. This is just another picture of a cantastoria. You can go to the next slide. The act of making art together. So this is us working on that cantastoria together. That builds community, helps you build trust. You start to share sacred space and build spiritual bonds with each other when you build art together, when you paint a banner, when you make a sign. You typically make half a day or 3 days and have art builds for an action that's coming up. And then you get hungry, so you share food together and you have all the tender moments that are in between the fight. And that is what builds our community to stay together. So we not only build art and do all this protest and lobbying and petition signing and all this stuff, but we build connections with each other, and that's what makes a movement. Next slide. This is one of my favorite pieces I ever did. I recruited my favorite comic book artist, Seth Bachman, to work with me. And I had 50 conversations with people in the occupied Turtle Island, otherwise known as the United States of America, about different fossil fuel infrastructure that they are fighting. And we took that and took it down and wrote 16 stories from personal stories from people that I had conversations with to make a 50-foot long banner that served as a blockade to, again, to FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So they couldn't enter the building that day. They were faced with the stories of all the things that they personally affected. And this was a very effective action. This banner has traveled around the whole North American continent. People have signed it everywhere it goes. We'll probably pull it out again. I have it rolled up in my table right now, but you know, if you ever need to borrow it for an action, it is yours. We have a library for it, and it's been all over the place. So it's there for the movement to use. Next slide. And these are just some images of us working on it together. So what Seth and I did is we made the stories, then he drew the comics for it. We traced it with a projector on you know, on the wall, and then we went through and said, okay, this is blue, this is yellow, this is green. So people that came into the art build were like, I am not an artist. I don't know what I'm doing. And my whole thing, anytime anybody walks into an art build like that or tells me that in a planning meeting, everybody is an artist. Everybody is an artist. Everybody has the capability to create together. This is what our human gift is. This is part of being a human, is we are here to create. And if people don't have, you know, and some people are very talented and have excellent creative skills, we make it very easy for folks to come in and say, oh yeah, but I can paint that box blue. Of course I can do that. So we try to always make sure that there is something for every level of people to do. Some people are like, I'm not great at painting. I don't want to touch a paintbrush, but I can help you write the narrative of each of the 16 chapters of this story. And so we'll work together with people that way, that maybe they're poets or maybe they're analysts, or, you know, also, like, I always use my mom as a litmus test. Mom, does this make sense to you? Because she has no idea what the hell I do. You know, she loves me and supports me, but she couldn't really say what I do as an organizer. But she'll tell me, like, I have no idea what you mean. Or, you know, it's always good to, like, make sure that she has the gift of the knowledge of the mass of people. So everybody has a skill to share in this movement. Next slide. We made t-shirts, like getting silkscreen parties together for a hearing. And we made hundreds of t-shirts for folks to show up to Vito, Port Ambrose, and people were like, I've never silkscreened before. I had no idea this is how you make clothes and t-shirts. So that was cool. We all had our demand on the front as we walked up to talk at the hearing. Next slide. And that helps to shape our narrative. So we have, you know, the conversation was had, we've communicated what we want, we've had the conversation. Now we are building to shape the narrative that's going to change our values and our worldview. So this was a very fun piece that we did talking about debt. We had debt boulders of student debt and housing debt, medical debt, and we rolled them across the field. It was just funny that these kids thought it was a toy, so they loved being rolled over by student debt, but it was just such a glorious way to show how it is crushing people unjustly. Next slide. We worked with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. They were trying to get Wendy's to sign the Fair Food Agreement to pay 1 penny more a pound for tomatoes, so they could get raises to do the work that they do, so people could eat fast food. And I believe they're still working on that. But we were able to make Wendy's a target in Union Square, where there's a Wendy's restaurant right on Union Square. So we were able to tell people, don't eat here today, because they're abusing these farm workers that pick your tomatoes. And people were like, oh, really? Oh, I'll take that literature, thanks. Next slide. Sequester. There was a point where the Congress was going to sequester like all of our social goods, like, you know, our civil rights and any access to things that we need, like medical care or education. So we decided to make a big game for the public square based on Twister. So if you go to the next slide, this shows people playing Twister, and then people were able to talk about the sequestration of what the Congress was doing. But it's just a good way to get folks together, and kids always like glob on to like public games. Those public games is like a really good way to build art. Next slide. This was another FERC action that we did, and we decided, we knew FERC was a rubber stamp machine, so we mixed up the Beatles song, The Yellow Submarine, and we made a song called FERC as a Rubber Stamp Machine, and we took it to Washington and tried to embarrass them and embarrass the commissioners. Next slide. You can use danger signs to like remake street signs that people are traditionally used to seeing, the stop sign, but change the name, change the word in it or something, and get the word out there. You can see the fracked gas pipeline and the Rockaway Peninsula coming in from the beautiful ocean that we love. This was a really devastating day, and we at least got the news out there to tell the story of it. Next slide. Using massive caution tape as blockades for the street. Next slide. Using street theater, we did walking tours, and we dressed up like paintings from the Whitney Museum of American Art, because they were allowing this Spectra pipeline to come into the basement. It was going from New Jersey under the Hudson River and into the basement of the Spectra, into the basement of the Whitney Museum. And so what we did is we tried to do a protest, but we did it as a walking tour and had little vignettes along the way. And we nodded to, you know, different historical points in time of gentrifiers versus the people. Next slide. Getting kids involved is really important. We got the kids learned about the LNG facility, and immediately they got it. They were like, this is bad. They all by themselves developed the Save the Mermaids campaign, and we helped them build their art, and they became lawn signs all over Long Island. It was like super cool. So get the kids involved. Like, they have amazing ideas, and they know what's going on. Next slide. So just want to remind you of what art in the public square looks like. This was during the Romney-Obama election, where we were like, you know, whoever wins, Wall Street's going to win anyway. It's always Goldman Sachs that wins. And the next slide. It just shows you what Times Square would look like without art there. And I have a couple of examples. If you want to just sort of, by 3 seconds, just flash through them. The next. Graphic design, good flyers are really important to name, location, target, and demand. Just keep it simple, keep it bold. Don't feel like you have to tell everybody all the things in the flyer. Have a website for that if people want to investigate further. Just something bold that people can say, that's me. And I'll stop on this slide really quick. If you have to be in a big meeting and you don't have a lot of time, you can use great design to print out an 8.5 by 11, bright pieces of paper. We had the whole crowd blanketed in these ones on the right. And then also on the left, we printed these out where people can write in who they are and why they support or deny, like whatever it is that we're doing. So getting the people involved, getting them to tell their story and documenting them. Next slide. Good graphic design, the Stop Williams Pipeline campaign logo. Next slide. Very clear demand of we say no. Good documentation, I also want to stress, is important. If you make a bunch of art, make sure that you have an awesome photographer that knows how to stage you at events. So for instance, this particular photographer, we have our demand, we have our solution in this photo, and we have we're at the site of destruction, at the site of the pipeline, but then we also have the neighborhood in the shot. And it's just like, that's such an epic shot. So always be thinking about how you want to be displaying all the stuff you're making. Don't guarantee that like, oh, this sign is really good, so my action's going to look great. Always make sure that you're thinking, how do we want it to be layered? How do we want it to be documented? And have that conversation with the photographer and videographers. They are part of your arts team. Next slide. take up space. There's many ways to take space and make it artful, make your demands and make it fun, make it performative. Next slide. We had a big phone outside of Schumer's office for 60-day occupation. Call FERC and tell them to stop this pipeline. Doing things like that are funny, that make people stop by and talk to you. Next slide. This is my contact info. I really mean it. Feel free to text or signal me anytime. Email is a little bit of a rat's nest for me, but texting or signaling me is really good. I'm always happy to talk through art projects with y'all's, and I'm really excited to be in the movement with you. And that's it.
Wow, that's fantastic, Kim. Just really, really awesome and inspiring. Can we put people's faces back up on the side so everybody can see each other? Because I want Kim to see everybody give her a huge round of applause. Or as Kim likes to do, we snap.
Stand on the shoulders of giants.
Well, your mom may not know what the hella you're doing, but I'm sure she is hella proud. So absolutely. And I just love the way it's participatory, and I love the way that it's all unique, and I love the way so much that when people talk at each other, the art that you all create together opens up a conversation, which is just amazing. So you can put questions to Kim in the chat. Kim, you got a couple minutes just to answer some questions?
Yeah, I can stay until 7:40.
Awesome. So if you have got questions for Kim, you can either raise your hand or you can put your question in the chat. And I'm just going to lead off unless somebody has their hand up right away. Let's see, I'm looking. Well, I'm just amazed by how many different ideas there are. So okay, so what's it like when you all get together and you try to come up with an idea? Paint a picture. Oh, no, I can't hear you.
What was the question? Sorry, Patty.
The question is, unless someone has one in the chat other than your phone number, let me just do a quick check. When you all come together and you've got an issue and you've got to decide what to do, can you kind of paint a picture of what's the first step?
Yeah, we got together in a circle and we got some drawing paper up on the wall, and then we say what would be the most, we talk about, okay, what we've heard from, our movement is we need to message this to somebody. So we always pick, we always make sure there's a clear target, there's a clear demand, and what is it that people want to convey. We do a number of different ideas. Once we all just chit chat about it, have an open conversation, usually we'll get some beers and pizza and sit around and talk about it. We'll then be oh yeah, that works. Oh, what about this though? That might not, we have to we also have to get there on the subway, so let's not make it too big, and all these things. So these are all organizational considerations, right? And then we start doing a drawing of it, and then say, okay, so and so is going to take this part, you're going to take that part. Things like
cool. That. So somebody wants to know how you made the boulders.
Those were just light fabric we got at this cheap and chic, amazing fabric store called Fulton Fabrics in downtown Brooklyn, and it was blown up garbage bags, and we put a slit and a zipper in it, and we blew up garbage bags so it was light, so you could even play with it in the public square. You can bounce it up into the air and things like that. But yeah, and then we painted it first. We painted, and made the pattern and then sewed it together.
Great. We have another question. Molly, our own Molly. Molly, you want to unmute and ask it yourself, sweetie?
Yeah. Thanks, Kim. That was really awesome to see all of your amazing work. Do you have any experience with using sustainable or upcycled materials for your art builds? And if you do, how hard or easy was it?
Everything I use comes from the trash.
Amazing.
I mean, sometimes paint, I'll either buy or I'll get, there's a big warehouse here called the Big Reuse, and they have people that are oh, I only used a half gallon of paint. We'll use that. But most of the stuff that I make is from like cardboard or old fabric, and or like banner material. You can use old sheets. You can sew sheets together and just paint like a quick layer of like watered down white paint on it to make it tencel, and then you can like sketch out your design on it and things like that. But most of the stuff I make is from materials from the garbage.
That's so cool. That's amazing. We've got a question. Sarah Darrow, you had your hand up. You want to unmute and ask your question of Kim?
I was looking for her phone number, but everyone else was too. So it's in the chat now. Thanks.
Okay. And how about Elizabeth Sierra? Do you have a question for Kim?
Okay. I was wondering just how effective is all of this? I mean, it seems very involving and proactive, but do you get any feedback that people have actually changed their policies as a result of this initiative?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I did have a couple of examples of press that we got and some successes that we had with the two young men that were able to stay in the country as opposed to getting kicked out because of the racist policies here. I also mentioned at the top of the presentation, this is one tactic in our toolbox. So it's not like, you're going to make a banner and you're going to change a politician's mind, or you're going to make a banner and you're going to shift the narrative of your entire neighborhood to not allowing whatever it is that you're fighting. This is a holistic process of a movement. It's not like, I don't look at this as a way to quantify, what we do. I look at this as a way, this is how we are building the movement. And, it's like the question that you asked is very, linear. All right. And I'm asking, let's look holistically.
Well, I'm particularly concerned about the fracking, because that seems to be, very impactful on our water supply and like the indigenous peoples, and their sacred grounds and things like that. And I'm just wondering whether or not that is the most impactful way that we can get people to be aware of what's going on, because a lot of people just don't care. When you see something visually, it has that kind of impact. I'm just wondering whether or not you've gotten any feedback regarding, hey, I saw this and I didn't realize all the damage that was being done.
Well, yeah, I mean, we vetoed Port Ambrose, which was a massive LNG facility that's connected to the fracking in Pennsylvania, where I grew up. My water is poisoned, where I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is why I'm in this fight. So yeah, I mean, we've had major successes. We beat the Williams pipeline. Patty and I were a big part of that together, and we made a lot of art for that movement. It's a big part of all the other work, all the research, all the policy work, all of the outreach, all of the education. Art is just a part of that, and that's just what I'm offering you here.
And I gotta say, my dog, I don't know if he'll ever forgive me for taking your symbol and making it into a sandwich board and putting it on Teddy, but
that was the best.
that picture went viral. It was great imagery. They did a huge banner drop outside of Cuomo's offices, on a skyscraper was of Cuomo's offices. I mean, these get people's attention. But one thing I want to share, like Kim, that you shared with us in some of the pre-calls, was that it also art can diffuse things too. So if you're doing a blockade or you're doing something and the police show up and you've got giant puppets, what do? Now my joke was, who do they handcuff? But it can diffuse a situation that otherwise might have just been a slam dunk. They're just going to slap on the cuffs, or there's going to be violence.
Yeah, definitely, and it also diffuses the public, like that family I mentioned that was afraid of Occupy Wall Street until they met us, and through Lady Liberty and getting their kids a picture with them. So it is a de-escalating tactic as well.
Great. And Kim, we want to be respectful of your time. You said 7:40, it's 7:41. Everybody give Kim a big snap, round of applause over this. Just was amazing. I know we all just really loved having you here, and you're welcome back anytime, and you're welcome back anytime to New Jersey to make art with us too, because
I hope to do that with you all. We'll make really good snacks too.
Oh, good. That I know. Okay.
Okay, bye y'all.
Bye, Kim. Thank you. Awesome. Kai, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Patty. And wow, what an amazing and inspiring presentation from Kim. I'm feeling ready to make some art. And I wanted to take a step back before we got into talking even more about art and the amazing role it can play in our activism, to talk about the current fight we are in at the League of Conservation Voters. And that's the Build Back Better campaign. So could folks raise your hand, just raise your hand on the Zoom or click the little reaction button if you've heard of Build Back Better. You might have heard it called the infrastructure plan. Seeing some hands, looks like Sarah's raising her hand, see Maggie, cool, okay. And I'm also seeing some people who aren't raising their hand. That's perfectly okay. So Build Back Better is, as I mentioned, it's also called the infrastructure campaign or the infrastructure program. It's part of President Biden's ongoing effort to meet the needs of this moment. It has the potential to be the most significant federal climate action taken ever, full stop. And the three most important things that we are fighting for in this campaign with volunteers like all of you all across the country are these three goals. 100% clean energy by 2035, meeting the needs of the climate moment. The Justice 40. The Justice 40 is an environmental justice commitment that 40% of the funding in the bill will benefit those Black, brown, and low-income people who have been hardest hit by the climate crisis. And finally, that it will create millions of good-paying green jobs. So jobs in a green economy that will help get Americans back to work. So with all that policy in mind, one number that I just keep coming back to and I think about as part of this Build Back Better campaign is 100%. So as I just mentioned, we're talking about 100% clean energy by 2035. We're also talking about removing every lead service line in the country, 100%, just getting lead out of our water, and providing infrastructure for all Americans to have broadband access. So if we just pause there, I'm gonna ask you can you give me a thumbs up if this sounds exciting to you, if you want to see this happen? I see Jill, 2 thumbs up, big thumbs up from Elizabeth, another one from Sarah. Great, okay, and a heart from Patty. So with those thumbs up, the question is, what do we need to do? We need to make our voices heard. All across the country, bold climate action like this is popular. The support is diverse. We can see some of that diversity on the call here tonight. We have people from 4 different states on the call tonight. And we see that people, regardless of what political party they identify with, regardless of what racial or ethnic group they identify with, there's strong support for getting this done. But that's not enough. The fossil fuel industry and other groups are fighting hard to block what we're doing, but we can make a difference. And one of the ways we can make a difference is through this art activism, is through building our people power. And what we're going to do now is go to breakout rooms and meet one another and start building some of that people power. So in just a moment, you'll be sorted into a breakout room on Zoom. There'll be 3 or maybe 4 people in your room. If you know them, great. If you don't, start by introducing yourselves and make sure you remember their names. That's going to be important. And then we want you to discuss these 2 questions. And I'll ask our amazing chat monitors, Molly or Halima, to just throw these into the chat so we have them. But the questions are, what art activism have you seen that has moved you? It can be something you saw tonight. It can be something you saw in person in your community. It can be something maybe you read about in a history book. But when has art moved you? When has it made your heart wake up? And then the next question is, what ideas do you have for art activism that you would like to participate in? Put your imagination cap on. If you were going to dream up some way to make art matter in the activism that you're committed to doing, what would it be? And talk about that with your group. So we'll take about 12 minutes in those breakout rooms to discuss those questions. And remember the names of the people in your group. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started.
Everybody back, Kai?
Yeah, we're back.
Oh, great, terrific. Well, how was that? I really love to know how everybody did. And did you hear Any good stories about art that moved you? Does anybody have anything they want to share or they heard about art that moved them that they briefly want to share? Raise your hand or put it in the chat. Okay, anybody see any? Okay, Jill has her hand raised. Jill, hello, Jill.
Hi, Patty. I had shared with my group and I said to Molly as our leader, I don't know if this is an art activist thing, but I remember very, very vividly as a child, my mom took me to see the AIDS quilt. And that was very profound. And I'm going to be 48 years old and I remember it as if it were yesterday. And it wasn't yesterday that my mom took me to see this AIDS quilt. And it had an incredible impact on me, even as a child. And the one thing that I remember very vividly, not only the AIDS quilt itself, but the boxes of tissues. There were just hundreds of boxes of tissues all over wherever the AIDS quilt was. And the AIDS quilt was so big, I believe it needed to be divided into states at one point. Like it traveled different states because it became so big. And that has had and will always have such a huge impact on me, even now. So,
Wow.
I wanted to share that with everybody.
Thanks, Jill. And that really points out that art, touches our heart. And when something touches our heart, it really moves us. And we remember it longer. Does anybody else have any art that they heard about that they found moving that they'd like to share? Or that they heard, a story that they heard from? Okay, Elizabeth, you've got your hand up. Elizabeth? Yep, you're muted.
Okay, Jill just happens to be my daughter. So anyway, my group discussed the impact of 9/11, the letters and the pictures that were on the fences. Have you seen my loved one? And Catherine also mentioned women going to various groups where their loved ones had been missing, either captured by some political faction, and the pictures, of the women holding pictures of their loved ones was very impactful. I contributed, and Rosalie and my group also discussed the fact about like the wildfires in California, the trees and the homes and everything. But when we see the animals who have been damaged, the koala bears that have been singed, it's more heart-wrenching when you see something alive that has been impacted by some kind of disaster.
Absolutely. Thanks, Elizabeth. That's those really good points. What touches people and what touches different people.
The little birds covered in oil. So many of these things that we react to because it's like, what can I do to help?
Yeah, absolutely. And Z just contributed the clotheslines that women's group hung on the streets with T-shirts for survivors of violence. Wow, that one just gives me chills just reading it, Z. So thank you for sharing that. The next question was, does anybody come up with any ideas? And does anybody want to nominate someone in their group? We have asked you to remember names, so nominate someone else where you heard a great idea that you want to share. Let's see, I'm looking for hands, and Molly and Kai help me out, and you see, and Halima, if you see anybody that I don't see. I'm scrolling. Hadley, do you have your hand up?
No, I don't, but thank you. But there are a lot of different things you mentioned in our group, so I just want to say it was a really good group. And just a comment in terms of how clothing on animals and people makes a lot of sense type of thing. And it's just funny because our group ended up talking a little bit about the sculpture cows, how they're all decorated, the cows, and they make different points in certain ways too. And also just a note, also a bumper sticker, even though they're old fashioned, out of date, whatever, they still make a point and they're only like $12. Because I have one that says, "What are you doing about climate change?" And every blooming car behind me for many years or whatever, I bring that point up to them and they can say whatever they want in their cars. Just a thought.
Great. No, that's a really cool idea. Sheila, I see you have your hand up. Hi, Sheila.
Yes.
Welcome back.
I'd like to nominate Vicki Reynolds. I spoke with her She's from Lanham, Maryland, and she was talking about this proposed maglev train that you know, would be barreling through her neighborhood, and she had some interesting ideas about that.
So you going to share the ideas, or
I could share the ideas, or if she wanted to share them.
We got to hear them.
She was talking about.
I can share some of them.
Yes, please do.
Oh, you want me to, or do you? Okay. So my son is home from San Francisco, and he's more of a cartoonist, but he's pretty artistically inclined. So he was listening in on parts of this with me. Streamlined vehicle. It's very new technology. Doesn't look like a train at all. It levitates on a magnetic field. So it would be very easy, because it is so streamlined, to do a cardboard mock-up of the maglev. And the real issue with the maglev right now is, the places that it's going to impact, lots of EJ communities are getting hammered by this. Either it's part of it's going to be tunneled and part of it's going to be above ground, but in both instances, EJ communities are really going to take a hit. And so what we could do is do a little simulation where we actually, and it's going to start in DC and end up outside of Baltimore. So we could do a little simulation where we have a cardboard mock-up of the maglev, and it kind of go, people can just hold posters that are pictures of their homes, or we might be able to do something a little more sophisticated where we represent neighborhoods with posters, but maybe do a simulation of the path. And for the parts that are tunneled, we can actually have the maglev, people that are, one of the fears is with tunneling that people are going to experience vibrations. So, we can have the people shake as it goes under. And then above ground, it's going to just be an incredible eyesore. It's going to hover over the tree line. It's going to take down a lot of trees. It's going to come precariously close to a lot of homes. So we could kind of simulate that too, and for the above ground. And, I think it would be kind of an easy, even if it sort of fell apart, if it wasn't exactly completely realistic, I think it would be kind of a fun simulation and a fun sort of.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we've had a lot of fun ideas in the chat, the small stickers and people dressing up as cows. And there was someone in my group who talked about, boats and flotillas, and there's music. So just a lot of creativity here, and this is super exciting. You're all charged up. Kai, I'm gonna give it to you, and you can introduce Maggie, our next speaker.
Thanks, Patty, and thank you everyone so much for sharing those amazing ideas. I just keep getting more and more excited as this conversation continues. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our friend and colleague, Maggie Bruns, the Director of Cultural Strategies for the League of Conservation Voters, to talk about the role art is going to play in our ongoing campaign. Maggie?
Hello, everyone. I, of course, just got a low bandwidth message. So if I freeze, just chat me here. So I can follow along. But hello, everyone. I'm Maggie Bruns, Director of Cultural Strategies. Been at National LCV for over 14 years now, and have really seen the growth of both our national operation, but also our states. And so really excited here to talk about how closely national and our state programs are working together in the art space and beyond. I think that really shows the power of our movement together. So I am going to be drilling in on some ideas and some examples of how we've started to incorporate art in our organizing. And I think that you'll start to kind of see where we've been, and then we're going to tee up where we're going together for the month of August. And we're hoping you'll get really excited for that piece. So Kai, if you wouldn't mind hitting the next slide here. And perfect. Yes. So climate art to action, that's kind of what I'm calling this month. But I wanted to take a step back and show a piece of art that we recently did here in DC, kind of playing off of what Kim said earlier. And like I said, this is not a new concept to social movements. We heard about the quilts on the mall back in the suffrage movement. Women took to the streets with chalk and covered the streets with messages for the right to vote. So this is not new by any means, but LCV as a whole has not really invested in it in a significant way until like this last year. So this mural here, we actually, we wanted to connect climate and democracy. And so we commissioned this mural and asked an artist to come up with a concept. And what you're seeing here is just that. Josephine Butler is known here in DC as a park advocate. She's no longer with us. She passed in the 90s, I believe. But if you go to public parks in Washington, DC, you likely stepping on grounds that she helped to preserve and restore. And she also just happens to be the founder of the DC statehood movement. And so this artist with this one, face can connect those two dots. And we were able to kind of insert that narrative before the House and Senate announced they were going to be taking up some statehood bills. And so this one mural generated about 10 news stories, literally with newscasters connecting climate justice to democracy issues. And we really couldn't have asked for a more beautiful mural. And I actually learned a lot about Josephine. I did not know she was the director or the founder of the statehood movement. So it's pretty cool. I think we've probably seen an uptick in Googling of Josephine Butler after we put this up. But like I said, this is an evergreen piece that continues to toot our message home. And that is, again, leaving it up to an artist to distill that complex issue down into one piece. And I think that's what Kim was getting at earlier as well today. So, so we are now committed to investing a lot of resources into this space so that we can organize on site next to these art activations. And so I think Emily Gale is on this Zoom with us here tonight, but she and I worked on this the next piece, and Kai, give me 1 second to set this up. But last year was our first year in putting art out onto the streets. We did this strategically because of COVID. We could not have the face-to-face interactions that we normally would have. So we had to think a little bit differently on how we can get people to realize that they need to register to vote. We needed to get them the resources to register to vote. And so our first ever huge art installation happened in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We're going to show you the video of that, and there's going to be sound. So you might want to take a few seconds now to find your sound button so that it's not too loud for you. We'll give you that second here. But so Emily and I decided that Allentown, Pennsylvania was the spot to drop this large scale art piece. It's 112 community buildings. We did the research and looked at what houses look like in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We had a sculptor cut out the houses, design a 3D box, which you'll see here in a second, that has a clear message that asks the Latinx community there to register to vote for their community. So for our community is what it says. And so Kai, I want to hit the video here. Thank you. And so you see from that, I think Kim mentioned this too, it's really important to have the right content capture available as well. So we were able to put this piece up in downtown Allentown, which there's not a lot going on there. The news showed up without us even telling them about it. They just were like, what are you guys doing? And people started coming to find out what we were doing. And that's how we're able to organize through art. And again, this was in the heat of COVID. So not that we're not there now still, but it was not safe to have a lot of organizers out there. So we were able to find ways around that by using QR codes, etc., on site so that people could access the forms. And it was a way to, again, build community because people are out there taking photos of the messaging, they're sharing it with their friends. And we were also able to use the photos and the video to turn those into ads and put them up on TV, put them up on YouTube. So it kind of creates that echo chamber. You see it downtown, but then you also see it on your computer at home, and it kind of follows you around that way with that message. So I'll hit up the next slide. Okay. And so, you know, we do the large scale art activations. We get the message out on the streets, but we don't want to stop just there. And so in the coming weeks, you're also going to see this other tactic where we collaborate with a bunch of artists in an artist lab that we sponsor, and they generate digital content that we upload to open source platforms like Giphy and Tenor. These are the content libraries that fuel the internet. So everyone has access to them. They're not branded, but they're provided to anyone to use. And so we launched this program last year in May through November. We got 32 billion views of this content, and that's a conservative estimate of our content related to the election last year. GOTV, that is. I'm showing you Earth Day content. Yeah, 32 billion views, and that's, you know, I stopped counting in November. I'm sure it's gone up from there. But we plan to do the same with climate in the coming weeks, and we hope to. Yeah, thank you. We hope to provide that all for you all to find so that you can share that content with your friends and keep organizing with us. So stay tuned for that. Again, these are like things like GIFs and memes and stickers. If you are used to using those, if not, tell everyone you know, and help us spread the word that way. So. Considering COVID, you know, we do want to be where people are, and unfortunately a lot of people are here on their phones now. So look ahead. So in the next 3 or 4 weeks, we will be launching a large scale art campaign with about 14 of our state LCVs, including the 4 that are represented on the phone here tonight. So we're really looking forward to that. I just want to kind of drill home on what these messages are all going to be about. It's climate action now, it's climate justice now, and we're going to showcase locally how clean energy jobs, climate justice, and are ways to build opportunity locally. And so all the states here tonight have helped inform what the art will look like. And I want to show you just one we did recently in Pittsburgh. So head it up. Perfect. So this was a piece we did right before Biden went to Pittsburgh to announce the infrastructure bill. And what we were able to do there was to drop this piece of art, and the news came out. They talked to the artist, and the artist said, I'm out here to tell Biden to go big on climate. And so that was the news in Pittsburgh the day before Biden arrived. And again, it's not that we can take full credit for anything, but it is continuing to build that drumbeat to get that legislation pushed forward. And so we're going to be doing that in the coming weeks ahead, and hoping you all can join us in that effort. And with that, I think I'm all done.
Thank you so much, Maggie. So yeah, can we show our appreciation, our love for Maggie with some snaps and Zoom hands, clap it up. Yes. So as Maggie mentioned, we are in a critical moment of this campaign. The negotiations in Congress are happening as we speak in the Senate. The House is currently on recess, so they're home in their districts across the whole country. And they may vote on this bill as soon as the 16th of this month. So in less than 2 weeks, we may see the most significant climate action in our ever in our history. But we have to keep pushing. So this recess is the moment to take action. And I want to pass it over to Patty to talk about what that will look like.
Yeah, thanks, Kai. Yeah, we may see the most significant climate action or not. And a lot of this, I think, is up to us. We really got to get our voices heard by our legislators. So we're going to be doing art actions here in New Jersey, and they will be in person. They will be, we will not, I think we will certainly be able to do, social distance on these, but we're definitely, they're going to be in person. They're going to be outdoors, and we'd love for you all, to come. So you need to watch your email for an invitation to an in-person event. We are creating these as we speak. So as soon as we know when and where, we will let you know. There will be some art type activities that you can do while you're there. And we'll also be wanting to, to take videos of people saying why Build Back Better matters to them. As you know, this is 3 in a series of trainings. The third, for Build Back Better, we did the telling your story training. We did how to submit a letter to the editor. And we have all of these stored on our website. If you go to our website under media at njlcv.org, and maybe somebody can pop that in the chat. Then you go to media, and then you click on media, and it will say past webinars, and they're all on there. The storytelling webinar, the letter to the editor, and there are links. And we're also putting links in the chat to information, how you can tell your story. You can click on a link and tell your story on video, or you can also, there's another link that's going to go in the chat. I'll see that it's in there, letter to the editor. You can click on that, and that will sort of set up a form that will sort of talk you through how to tell your story in a letter to the editor form. Never minimize the power of your own story. So we hope you all will come to these art activation events. Please, keep this enthusiasm going. We're really excited, and we hope you are too.
And if I can just jump in there, Patty, we are also doing the events in New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. We have all 4 states represented on the call, and we didn't want to leave you all with the impression that we're not making art all across the country. So for the Marylanders, the New Yorkers, and the Pennsylvanians on the call, we're making art in your areas too. So look out for
absolutely, and 16 states actually for ours, and we definitely want to thank our partners for being with us on the call tonight. But before we go, we would love to thank you for these great comments. Fantastic webinar. Yeah, thank you so much. We'd like you to type in the chat if you can, because we always learn from your input. And Kai, you take this one.
Absolutely. So before you go, this campaign is ongoing. We are building this together. We couldn't be doing this work without the amazing volunteers like you. So before you go, it would be a tremendous help if you could let us know 3 things in the chat. What's your takeaway, your big lesson from tonight, the one thing you're going to remember? What's something that worked well on this Zoom call that you want us to do again in the future? And what's something we could do even better next time? So just let us know those 3 things. and then check out the links in the chat to take action by writing your story in a letter to the editor or by recording your story on video. And we will see you at the art actions in your state.
Absolutely. And thanks, Kai. I want to thank Kai. I want to thank Maggie and your partner, Emily, if she's here, for all the great work that you do. I want to thank Kim, if she's not here anymore, for her wonderful presentation. And of course, Molly, Joe, and Halima for all their support. And I want to thank all of you for once again showing up. So give yourselves a big round of applause. And we'll see you at the art actions. Keep an eye on your emails. We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.